Welcome everybody. We'll get started here right at 1:50. Then actually, one of the presenters, if you wouldn't mind throwing a link to our file with all of our PowerPoints in it into the chat. That way people can open that if they would like to as we present here. Got a nice sized group going here, everybody. We'll get started just about now. Okay, so co-hosts, if you could continue admitting folks, and I will go ahead and start the introductions. So, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to session E5, supporting mentors and candidates in building an initial individual learning plan or individual induction plan. I'm Christina Najarro, and I'm a consultant with the Professional Services Division at the CTC. A few reminders before we begin today. This session will be recorded. The slides for the session can be found. We're going to shoot a link into the chat here in a second, and it can also be found. There's a link on the agenda to get you to all of the slide decks from today's sessions. We have one more that's going to go in at the end of the session today, so they will all be available. After I introduce our presenters, I'm going to be monitoring the chat for questions, and we're going to save all the questions for the end of the session today. So please do not use the raise hand function. We're going to just save all questions until the end, and we'll get them through the chat. I'm going to introduce everybody in the order that they're going to be presenting today. So first, I would like to introduce LaVon Chastain. She's the Leadership Services Director for Kings County Office of Education. She oversees teacher and admin induction programs for the county, as well as their intern program and preliminary admin program. She was the lead for the group that started the induction conference 4 years ago in Fresno and continued as the lead the following year until it was handed off to the next cluster. LaVon has been in the world of induction for about 6 years, starting with teacher induction. Her team and she wrote the Clear Admin program about 4 years ago and have since added an intern program. They are very passionate about supporting all educators, new and veteran, and as you can imagine, are kept very busy, especially during this unprecedented time in education. Next, we'll be presenting Dr. Marco Nava. He has served school communities in diverse educational settings in Los Angeles. As the administrator of induction and credentialing in the Los Angeles Unified School District, he provided coaching and professional growth opportunities for aspiring leaders and experienced administrators. In 2013-14, he was awarded an American Councils for International Education Fulbright Fellowship, and he has presented research on school improvement, teacher pedagogy, social emotional learning, and leadership development at various national and international education research conferences. Third is Brittany Mabe. She is an instructional services coordinator in the Chula Vista Elementary School District. She provides statewide assessment, accountability, and teacher induction. She's had the privilege of working with the Chula Vista District Induction Program and leading mentors, candidates, and stakeholders through program updates and a recent accreditation site visit. As a foster mom and educator, Brittany is passionate about supporting new teachers in this profession and helping them cultivate meaningful relationships with students and their families, mentors, and colleagues. And finally, today you'll be hearing from Kristen Loy, who is the Teacher Induction Program Manager for the West Contra Costa Unified School District in the East Bay Area. She appreciates being a part of the induction community, starting as a BITSA participant with her portfolio to becoming a support provider, and now with her current role as teacher on special assignment. Kristen is always ready to learn more and engage in meaningful ways to support teachers and looks forward to sharing and connecting with you today. As a recently former Bay Area person, I would like to especially welcome all my friends that I knew in my work at Fremont Unified. So welcome today, and let's go ahead and jump right in. Lavon.
Thank you for that, Christina. We really appreciate that. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and launch the poll. As we get started, before I start sharing my screen, I'd like you just to take a few seconds to answer this very one simple question.
Okay, so Lavon, we have almost 120 responses out of 128. Overwhelming 80% say teacher induction, 8% say admin, and 13 say both.
Thank you for doing that. That just gives us, I'm going to share my screen now, that gives us an idea of who's in our audience. And we're going to get rolling. So I am here for administrator induction, and I understand that most of you are here for teacher induction, so bear with Marco and I as we share a little bit of information about the administrative side of induction. As Christina said, my name's Lavon Chastain. I'm from Kings County Office of Education. I serve as the Leadership Services Director. And we are not a single district, we are a county office, so we are a consortium. We take everybody in from around the county. And while I oversee both teacher and admin induction programs, as I mentioned today, I will just be speaking about our admin program. So to begin the process in our admin program on building a high quality IOP or a leadership plan, and we always start with building solid relationships with everyone in our program. But to start for our candidates, they start actually by completing a self-assessment with the support from their coach. And it's based on the capsules, the standards for education leaders, much like teacher induction CSTPs. Once the self-assessment is completed, their rankings and evidence informs their first leadership plan, and it's connected to their current reality. So we always want our administrators to work on a leadership plan that is meaningful, high quality, but it's also based on their current reality, what they're being asked to do or tasked with at their current location or their work site. And most often, newer administrators are tasked with things like discipline or attendance. And in order to build that meaningful IOP, we want to make sure that they are addressing what is currently happening for them in their role. And again, because we're a consortium, not a single district, I have candidates from all over the county and in other non-traditional settings like our local, the prison system. Here's an example of one of our self-assessments that we use. If a candidate ranks themselves a 0, then no evidence is required. They begin their first IOP. We always suggest finding an area that they may have scored themselves low in or where they may have a larger lack of experience or knowledge. They work very closely with their coach on completing the self-assessment. And then this is an example of our IOP. Our candidates work together with their coach. And again, it's based on their current reality, how they rank themselves on their initial assessment. And then our administrative candidates modify their IOPs throughout the year. In our program, they're able to complete at least 2 IOPs per year of the program. And then at the end of their first year of the program, the candidates will complete a mid-program progress monitoring document that outlines where they started and where they are at the end of their first year. When they do the self-assessment, they use both documents to complete their next ILP with their coach. And if you're interested, if you're here for administrative program information, I've put both of these documents in the folder. I think Marco dropped the link to our folder. So the documents are there, and I'm always happy to talk more about them. So coaching really is the heart of our program. In order for our candidates to be successful, we work really closely with our veteran administrators, and they have to show us, they have an application process, and they talk to us about how they are successful as a coach. And we provide quarterly training for our coaches so that they can start by building that rapport with their candidates, building relationships with them. And again, because we're at a county level, I personally try to go out and meet with each individual candidate and coach and sit and monitor coaching conversations. But again, the heart of our program is coaching, and then documenting their progress throughout the program to build those high quality ILPs. I feel like I just ran through and sprayed you with a fire hose and said, take a drink, but that's what I have for you. And now I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Marco.
Thank you, Lavon. So let me get my screen shared in just a second, and then I can continue. And like Lavon, I will quickly go through this PowerPoint, and if there's any extra time, then Brittany and Kristen might be able to use it, since the majority of the people here are for teacher induction programs. So, all right, here we go. So let me share that. Okay, so I'm Marco Nava. I'm from the Los Angeles Unified School District. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the program that we have for the CLEAR Administrative Services Credential, which is our Los Angeles Administrative Services Credential, which we call LOSC. And in our program, we do have a team of 8 full release coaches, which means we work full time on this program. And so we do all the coaching in our program. We do not have part-time coaches that we've hired to come on board. So this is part of our daily work. And currently we support anywhere from 8 to 10 candidates each. So let's just begin at the top of kind of this quadrant. When our candidates begin the program, we do ask them to complete a candidate and school or office profile. And basically this gives us information about who they are, where they're working, what some of the experiences they have that they're bringing in are, and then where they'd like to be in a few years. And so this is really going to help us begin that coaching conversation with them. Then if we go to the left here, we go counterclockwise. We do a deep dive into our capsules. So we really open up our descriptions of practice, and we unpack those. We have several activities for our candidates to really learn what these capsules are. Some of them have not seen them in a few years, or some are a little new to them. So we want them to have a good grounding, a good understanding as to what those are. Then moving over again now to the right, then we ask them to complete a self-assessment. And really they rate themselves on the different capsule standards and elements. And then when we sit down to talk about our induction plan, we use the information from their profiles, we use the capsule information, and then their ratings to then help them assist them in developing their professional learning goals for our individual induction plan. And so I'll go on to our next slide here, where this is just a sample of the first page of our induction plan. We have 6 pages, which are 1 for each capsule. So we ask our candidates to start thinking about what the growth goal for 1 year, the first year of the induction program, might be. And we structured it in a way where we do ask them to develop a SMART goal. So we do ask that they have their professional growth goal, and we have scaffolded it. This was a request that has come from running multiple cohorts where candidates have said, we'd like a scaffold for doing the SMART goal. And so we have that in there, but by no means does everyone have to complete it in this fashion. They can adjust it in any way they like, any way they feel comfortable with. So in this example, they're going to be developing their goal around developing a shared vision around their school or office. And the reason I keep emphasizing office is that in our program in LA Unified, anywhere from 40 to 50% of our cohorts are non-school site administrators. We have a very large number of school support administrators. And so they take a very large part of our program as well. And just to give you a sense, currently we have 60 people in a cohort. Just 3 months ago, we had 120 people enrolled. And of those, 40 to 60% may be non-school site people. So we have to find ways to support them in developing these goals as well. So once they develop these goals, we actually sit down and we look at how they rated themselves on the self-assessments, and then we have a conversation around what that growth goal might be for the year. And again, we really draw from the work of improvement science, and so we take that PDSA cycle, the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle, and we talk about what they can actually do. So we don't want them developing goals that we know they will not be able to meet within a year's time. We want it to be user-centered, right? Something that they directly oversee at their school site or offices. And so then we want to make sure that they're attainable as well. And so we guide them through the coaching conversations on sharpening the goals. And this takes months to develop, and we modify and tweak it as we go. Then on their action steps, we have them outline some of the activities that they will be engaging in that will help them reach some of those growth goals that they had set out for themselves. And then obviously, like all programs, there's the evidence collection. And so we encourage them to have agendas, PowerPoints, flyers that are advertising it, plans, anything that they want to use as their evidence of engaging in this work, of engaging in the learning. We have to account for the hours that they do. And then we do ask them to have evidence for all of the elements within the capsule standards. So they have to then tag the evidence, so to speak. So when they put down some evidence and let us know this corresponds to 1A, 1B, or 1C, then we have a coaching conversation to make sure that the evidence is aligned to the activity that they engaged in. And if it's not aligned, then we have a further conversation of what they might want to do to make sure that the next piece of evidence is aligned or where it might more appropriately fit in. And on their outcomes, we ask them to just bullet point 1, 2, or 3 quick thoughts of some of their learnings that they had during engaging in this activity. Because at the end of the year, we do ask them to reflect on every capsule, and they'll draw from these bullet points to help them complete that task for reflection. And so this is just a nice guide, because some people start engaging in this work from the beginning of the year, and then at the end of year 1, when they're trying to think back what they learned, if they don't have a written documentation or record of that, it's a little more difficult to remember all of the pieces that went into that. And so our cycle, like many of yours that are have induction programs, we begin here on the left again with our candidate profiles. We like to get to know who they are. Then we get into the descriptions of practice, the self-assessment that I had talked about earlier, and then finally the individual induction plan and the goals. Then when we start year 2, it's that repeat of the cycle. We do ask them to update their candidate profile, and the reason is that within LA Unified, we have many people who's changed schools mid-year. We have people who change positions, and we're talking about an administrative base, people who are administrators within LA Unified of 3,000 school site people and thousands of other non-school site people. So movement in these programs, sorry, let me get this. Sorry, as you know, we still have our home phone line, and of course it goes off at the worst time. So we have many school site, non-school site. There's a lot of people who move between different offices and positions, and so we ask them to do that candidate profile again. And then in year 2, we adjust and create new goals for year 2. Some of our candidates are engaged in some real meaningful work, and they just want to adjust 1 or 2 of the goals and continue the work they did from year 1. And so we have coaching conversations around those. And then again, we have the end of the year 1 self-assessment, and at the end of year 2 is their final self-assessment. And one trend that we have seen from the beginning of year self-assessment and the middle of year is that sometimes people will actually rate themselves a little lower, like developing, because once they unpacked the capsule standards, they realized what they mean, and they were misassessing what they meant. And when they actually engaged in the work, they realized, I'm really not engaging in vision casting and, doing these types of other things that I thought I was. And so we see a little bit of a drop in some of the ratings, and then we see them pick up again at the end of year 2. And so we have the conversations again around those IIP learning goals at the end of the second year. All of the conversations we have with our candidates, these coaching conversations, are ones about professional growth and learning. So all of the assessments are done by our candidates. We simply provide guidance and support, so we do no type of evaluation with them. One of the things that we've noticed in our program and with our IIPs is that because we work full-time with the district, we attend principal meetings. We are held by the same types of policies and standards of any of the other employees. And so that, for us, has helped us have these rich, meaningful conversations with our candidates, because we're all administrators within the same district. And so we receive high ratings from our candidates in our programs simply because we're so engaged in the work that they are as well. And I know some of my team members are on today's Zoom call, so shout out to the LA Unified team. Thank you guys. You guys are awesome. I will place these resources and samples in the resource folder. I didn't get an opportunity to do so earlier, but I will do that before the end of today. So now, Lavon and I spoke a little bit about our induction programs for administrators and how they are learning to lead. I'm going to hand it over to Brittany now, who's going to talk about our teacher induction, where they're learning to teach. So Brittany.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm excited to be here with you all. My name is Brittany Mabe. I am a coordinator in the Chula Vista Elementary School District, and I direct our teacher induction program. So just a little bit of context about size. We typically run around 120 teachers within our induction program. This year we're at 60, and I know many of you are facing similar challenges, but we're excited to support these 60 teachers, and it is a wide scope of who we support. We also support our charters that are within our district. So we have K through 12, both ed specialists, multiple subject and multiple subject and single subject teachers in our program. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm talking to you today, of course, about this overarching topic of supporting mentors and candidates in building a quality ILP. And as I was really thinking about how we've been successful in doing so in Chula Vista, it went back to really the foundation of our system. And so there are 4 areas that I'm going to just touch on briefly today. Number 1 being starting with relationships, then the communication that we have with all stakeholders, how we collaborate with them, and always going back to connecting with the system as a whole. And so in starting with relationships, we've done a couple of things that we have found have really, really benefited our mentors and candidates in their building their relationship and in turn impacting their students. So one thing that we have done is we have started having frequent ongoing training and skill building for our mentors. So I've been with our program now for 2 years, and upon coming into the program, I was learning myself all about the program standards and thinking about what full implementation of the program standards would look like. And I know most of you that are in this session, you're familiar with those induction program standards. And so as I was digging into program standard 4, which is all about that mentor development, I found some areas that our program could be strengthened in, and that was that support for mentors. So last year we began mentor virtual chats. So once a month I host a session online. Even prior to COVID, we were just doing this online, getting together and doing a study through the art of coaching, which is that center graphic on your screen. So that was one way that we were starting to address that relationship building. One, me building that relationship with them, and 2, building those skills within the mentors as well. And also we took a even deeper dive with the mentors we have several required training sessions through the year. And so you can see in the top right corner, that's just a quick image of one of the slides where we looked at specific coaching strategies and building relationships from within the art of coaching. Continuing that idea with relationships, we've also been or tried to be very intentional on how we support our candidates with the relationships that they build with their mentors and administrators. So really focusing on that triad level of support and encouraging that at the beginning of the year and ongoing. And also really talking to our candidates about the systems of support that are in place. So most of you, or like most of you, being that we're a single district induction program and we have such a wide scope of who we're supporting in the program, we have to find ways to really have everybody connect and truly meet the needs that they're facing within their specific credential area. And so with that, we try to connect them with beyond the mentor, who are they going to look to? We know that in both induction programs, admin and teacher induction, they're 2-year programs. So beyond these programs, how are we helping them strengthen that system of support? So from there, the next area that I think has been pivotal for us is increasing communication. So with our advisory, I forecast and review everything with the members of our advisory committee. And who that is, we have several teachers that are not involved in the induction program. We have actually one teacher that's not involved in the induction program and 2 teachers that are mentors in our program serve on our advisory panel. And then we have a site administrator, our director from human resources, and also connections to our local IHEs and our county office. So we've really got a great lens within our advisory, and so communicating with them first and getting their insight has been a great strategy for us. Also, we have increased our communication with mentors and the candidates. We have a monthly newsletter that goes out to all teachers in the district, and within that newsletter, there's a page specific to teacher induction. And then also thinking about the lines of communication, we've increased communication and really been intentional to have our site administrators be very knowledgeable of what the program requirements are for the teachers that are within induction. Another area that I have found was really, what's the word I'm looking for, powerful. When I came in, a lot of the mentors that were working within the program had been mentors for our induction program for a long time, and they're amazing. But as we started to really look at the ILP, there were questions that kept coming up. And so for us, we had to walk through and be very transparent of, we're going to continue to update our ILP and enhance it and make it better because our program is based on these program standards. So we actually started with our advisory, and then after I had taken our advisory through this process, we then took the mentors through a certain process. And what that process was unpacking the preconditions and the program standards. So again, if you have a program where everyone is very familiar with teacher induction and maybe BITSA, having them work through this process of, well, what are the preconditions and then what are the program standards, that for us was monumental in gaining ground as we continue to update our program. And then we also were taking then the ILP structure back to the same stakeholders and asking them for feedback. So after the mentors really had a deep understanding of the program standards, they then were like, oh, I understand why this is on the ILP. And it was easier for them to support their candidates because they could understand why the ILP was built a certain way. So that was just one thing that for us made a huge difference in gaining that support. And that was really ensuring that all stakeholders had that ability to collaborate and understand the preconditions and the program standards for teacher induction. And then lastly, ultimately, we've made it our goal to connect to the system. And in Chula Vista, we are an interdependent system where our focus is on each child and that they're an individual of great worth. And ultimately, there's a lot of stakeholders in play, as many of you serve as well. So when you have a large system, and we actually are the largest K-6 elementary school district in California, and in serving a large system, we have to be very intentional with our focus and how we're aligning our instruction. So for us, having this connectedness to where we're going as a system was very important to our teacher induction program. So being that the district's model is that every child is an individual of great worth, our mission statement for induction is truly that we're going to support each teacher as they impact each and every student in our district. So one of the ways that we've done that within the goal setting process is we, as I had mentioned earlier, really encourage that triad connection between the mentor and the site administrator, the principal, and the candidate, and having them have a conversation on where the site is at and where the district is at. And so on this final slide, you can just see a couple of the questions that we use at those initial goal setting conversations. And then once we've identified an area that the candidate wants to work on for their goals, we then ask the questions in the second area. Ultimately, is this going to improve teaching and learning? And then, of course, how does this align to the CSTP? So these questions are directly from how we support our mentors in having those goal setting conversations. And I hope that that is a useful resource for you. And this, again, this presentation will be shared in the Google Drive. Thank you so much, and I'm going to hand it over to Kristen.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Good afternoon, everyone. As Christina shared earlier, my name is Kristen Loy, and I'm with the West Contra Costa Unified School District Teacher Induction Program. We're also a single district, and we've had about 175 to 190 participants for the past few years with our program. I'm going to start with just a little story to give you some background. A couple of years ago in 2018, I found myself at the beginning of the school year without my wonderful, experienced colleague, Anita, who had successfully led the program for years and years. She had just retired, and due to budget cuts, our district decided not to replace her and reduced our department. On top of that, we were also in our 5th year of the accreditation cycle, and I had never experienced any kind of accreditation, and I was terrified of it. And I don't think I need to tell all of you how stressed I was, because I know that many of you are in similar situations or maybe even more challenging situations than that. But I am happy to say that in that next year and a half of accreditation, up until our site visit last March, I really did find the accreditation process to be such a valuable and reflective opportunity for us to just really improve our program and grow and see how we could better support our teachers, whether they were our participating teachers or our mentors. And so one of the areas that we did really look at was our ILP. And so this presentation is in that shared folder, but there's also a bit.ly there at the bottom if anyone would like to access it. It is CIC E5 if you access it. All right, and so in our short time together, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about our ILP and the development process. And I hope it'll be helpful or maybe just reaffirming for you with things that you're doing with your program. And so when we're thinking about building a quality and rigorous ILP with our participants, we really focus on these 4 themes: building the participant's mindset, having organized and supportive structures, really emphasizing the flexibility of the ILP, and then also having multiple opportunities to give feedback to our participants. And so I'm curious how many of you out there are still continuing to hear when you ask them about their thoughts of induction, are still hearing busy work or paperwork, or my favorite, I already did this in my credential program. And so a couple years ago, we were still hearing these words when we asked our participants what they knew or what they thought of when it came to induction. And so we really needed to figure out how to shift our participants' mindsets and even some of our returning mentors, their mindsets about induction and about the IOP and how it can really be a personal and meaningful experience for them and just this growth opportunity. And so one idea that we had was, since the ILP is the roadmap for induction, why don't we frame the whole induction experience and their inquiry like a road trip? Because who doesn't like going on a road trip? And so at the beginning of our road trip, we do have an ILP workshop with all of our participants and their support providers that they attend together. And in this workshop, we really focus on the actions that the participants take when they are building their ILP. Being adult learners, we know that our participants are coming in with different needs and different experiences and the different ways that they learn and come to our sessions. And so from the very beginning, we want them to know that this is a personalized experience. And with the ILP roundabout that we have here, there are just different ways for them to be able to enter the development process. And so one way, some of our participants will start with their focus areas. They know exactly what focus areas and elements that they want to focus on for their inquiry throughout the year. We also have some participants who prefer to reflect first. Using the continuum of teaching practice, they might reflect on the different elements and then think about their greatest needs and the areas to focus on after they've reflected. We also have some participants who may have already developed SMART goals with their grade level teams or at their site level and decide to align their ILP goals with the SMART goals that they've already developed at their site. And then finally, another entry into that roundabout for the ILP is through the learning opportunities that they participate in. For example, this year, our district is really focused on race and equity PDs on Fridays. And we've had a couple sessions around grading for equity. And we've had some participants who have really taken those PD opportunities and they have just run with them. They are so excited. They're so passionate about examining their assessments and the grading for equity PDs that they are turning those into their ILP goals and taking a really deeper dive and look at their practices in those areas. And so our participants, you know, are circling through this ILP roundabout, and they are going to be doing all of these actions multiple times throughout the year, but just for them to know that they have the choice of how and where to enter the ILP roundabout just makes the whole process for them more meaningful, more relevant, and gives them that ownership from the very beginning. And we don't have enough time today, but if you access this presentation later on, you can click on each one of these actions and it'll take you to a slide from our ILP workshop that just gives a little bit more information. And then a fifth action that we really focus on with our ILP is to collaborate. And so we want our participants to know that this is not an isolated activity. It's not something that they're just going to be doing independently on their own, but that it's a continuous and collaborative process with their main road trip partner, their support provider from the very beginning. They are in on the planning at the very start. And then we've also implemented a couple of additional structures that allow the participating teacher to collaborate with others on the development and then also receive some feedback. And so just like how Brittany mentioned in her presentation and what many of you are doing as well, we have a triad meeting between the participating teacher, their support provider, and their site administrator, just for them to be able to get their input the input from their site administrator, but then also give them that protected time to share with their site administrator what they're working on, what their goals are, and how they plan to achieve these goals for the year. Because I know, just like everyone's programs, the site administrators are so incredibly busy. And so it's really nice for our participating teachers to have this time with their site administrator and to share their work. And the final collaborator is myself, the TIP staff, giving feedback to our teachers and that individual feedback for every person on their ILP. I will say that this is a huge challenge because it's incredibly time consuming to give that individual feedback and comment on all of their ILPs. But we just find it to be so worthwhile because it really increases the quality of their ILP and also the quality of their induction experience and have a positive impact on induction for them and their teaching practice. One other area in terms of mindset that we've really had to focus on with our participants is knowing that the ILP has flexibility, that it is not set in stone, that what they decide at the beginning of the year for their goals and their plans, they do not have to stick with that if it's not working for them or if it's no longer one of their needs. And so we want to make sure that all of our participants know that the ILP needs to continue to be meaningful to their practice. And it's something that we have to constantly remind our participants about. I think one of the most difficult pieces of feedback that I read within the past couple of years on our end of year survey was a participant who shared that induction was a waste of time and that they really wished that they could have focused on what they needed, which was supporting English learners instead of meeting with their support provider and having to work on their ILP goals. And it's something that obviously has stuck with me still months and years later, because I thought, well, why didn't that teacher just change their goals? If that was their high need, why didn't they change? And it's just now something that we constantly remind our participants, but then also work with our mentors and training them to really listen to the needs of their participating teacher. Because as we all know, we're providing that balance of just-in-time support and the longer analysis of the teacher's needs for growth. And so if there are any mentors that are here today, I really encourage you to listen to your PT's needs. And if you're finding that that just-in-time support is coming back week after week after week, that it might be time to pivot and change their ILP goals and focus on this area of need.
So we have a little less than 1 minute left.
Okay, thank you, Christina. And then also just needing to take this detour, right? Because we all need to take detours in life sometimes. So very quickly with my 1 minute left, one final structure that we have implemented is a mentoring mini IOP that we do with our support providers at the beginning of the year. And so this is a parallel process to the participants' ILP that they develop later on. And so with this, our mentors are reflecting on their mentoring practice and also developing a goal for their practice for the year. It's also a great opportunity for us to be able to get some feedback and see what support or professional development our mentors feel that they need for the rest of the year. And so I know it's something that our mentors appreciate doing, and it makes them feel ready to support their candidates with the candidates' ILPs. And so with that, I'm going to come to a close. This slide just has some links to the different documents that I referred to in the presentation that you're welcome to access. I am happy to share that our participants do have a very positive growth mindset around the ILP now. We occasionally have a candidate who still says, I already did this in my credential program, but here's my answer for anyone else who has this issue. I say, but what's different now is you. You have more skills, you have more knowledge and experiences. you have a different group of students. And so you are in a different place from where you were before. And it's just important to think about where you want to go now. So thank you very much for letting me share with you today. We do have some time if you have questions for Brittany, Marco, Lavon, or myself, but also feel free to contact me if you have any specific questions in the near or far future. So thank you, and I will pass the mic back to Christina.
Awesome. Thank you so much, all four of you. That was awesome information. I wish I was still in the field. I'd definitely be stealing bits and graphics from many of you. There are a couple, just kind of suggestions. If everybody could read through the chat. Kristen, you already responded to that dropping of the bit.ly. And yes, all of the slide decks are in the shared folder. If you scroll all the way to the top of this chat, Marco posted a link to the shared folder, or it's also on the actual agenda that you got emailed from Gay Roby yesterday. Did anybody else have any questions that they would like to ask before we end this session? Lots of thank yous, lots of very informatives. That's awesome. Okay. I am not seeing any questions. I'm going to give it one more minute. But I will remind everybody that we're about to head off to the closing session today for the day. And a reminder that after the actual technical close of the conference, we are going to be hanging out to celebrate Terry Clark. As I'm sure all of you have heard, she is retiring. So please do hang out for that. We are losing a monumental figure in the induction world. So her brain is going to be missed, and I don't think she's going to be let off that easily. We're all going to be emailing and texting her in her retirement, bugging her while she babysits her new grandbaby. Okay, I am not seeing any questions, and so that we all have a few minutes for a break before we head off to that ending session, I'm going to go ahead and close this. And you do have the ability to contact the presenters. I think they all have their contact information on their slide deck. So thank you so much.